The diminishing return system in Dead by Daylight has been a disappointment thus far. The whole point of the diminishing return system itself is to help encourage more build variety, as the system functions as a soft punishment for any builds that involve stacking multiple perks that benefit a certain action. Things like repairing, healing, and haste are the most commonly impacted values by diminishing returns, as there are plenty of perks that increase or decrease the speed of those actions. But the reason why diminishing returns has been disappointing thus far is mostly because there have been basically next to no perk reworks or even simple number adjustments since the diminishing return system was first introduced. And because of the lack of balance changes, a lot of the same meta perks and builds are still overused to the point of exhaustion. In short, I've yet to see a real genuine attempt by the devs to use the diminishing return system for what it was created for. And with the lack of a mid-chapter patch this summer, I'm not expecting any concrete perk updates anytime in the near future. So with the diminishing return system now in place, and a lot of the same boring meta perks still even more boring to use, I started searching for a new fun build to experiment with. After taking a look at all of the survivor perks and items and add-ons, an idea came to mind. What's the largest a great skill check can look like? And to be clear, I'm referring to the great skill check success zone only, not the overall size of the skill check itself. Dustin's perk Teamwork Full Circuit does allow for the success zone of the good part of a skill check to be increased, but it's dependent on having multiple people repairing the same generator. I wanted to confirm what the largest version of a solo great skill check currently is. To help understand the limitations or exactly what's possible with this, we first need to confirm whether skill check size is impacted by diminishing returns. In order to verify this, we can check the in-game manual. Yes, you did hear that correctly. Dead by Daylight has an in-game manual. To find it, you just go to the main menu and select Learn to Play from the dropdown, and it should give you the option. It's truly a really nice resource to have, and it's crazy how far this game has come, because something like this would have been incredibly useful in the early days of this game. This is not only a great resource for verifying information, like in regards to what diminishing returns impacts, but it also helps clarify official words or terminologies for actions or modifiers. Essentially, this is relevant because there is actually an official terminology to help describe the changing size of a skill check. And honestly, having a more concise and official way to describe the changing size of a skill check is kind of just good information to know. The in-game manual for Dead by Daylight mentions something called skill check difficulty. I was not initially certain on what this was referring to exactly. However, after a process of elimination, the term skill check difficulty is specifically referring to any increase or decrease in the size of a skill check. And just like other actions or values that can be increased or decreased, skill check difficulty is impacted by diminishing returns. However, the only way for a great skill check to be universally increased in size is to use the perk This Is Not Happening. For those unaware, this perk provides a 30% increase in the great skill check success zone, but only while injured. So while this perk can be universally applied to any action that involves great skill checks, it's only a mediocre 30% increase. But is this the maximum increase that's possible though? Thankfully, This Is Not Happening is not the only thing that currently increases the size of great skill checks. There's two medkit add-ons that, when combined together, provide a combined 30% increase in the bonus skill check size, which essentially means the great skill check size. These two add-ons are the rubber gloves and the sponge. I'm not sure as to why the add-on descriptions are using outdated language, but that's probably the least of the devs' priorities. But wait a minute, you might be asking, what about diminishing returns? Well, the twist with diminishing returns is that it clearly states in the in-game manual that add-ons are not impacted by diminishing returns whatsoever. So if you combine the usage of This Is Not Happening with these medkit add-ons, you can actually have healing skill checks that have a 60% larger great skill check success zone. However, even though a 60% increase in the size of a great skill check is cool, it's not all that amazing or helpful in any way. This 60% increase is only limited to healing with a medkit while injured, which is likely only happening when a survivor self-heals. Most of all though, it's pretty obvious that these two medkit add-ons are quite dog shit even when they are combined together with This Is Not Happening. Of all the medkit add-ons to use, these two are probably the worst to equip, as charge add-ons always reign supreme. But this 60% increase in the size of a great skill check is unfortunately the largest possible increase as it stands today. This experiment was a bust. Or so I thought. What's the point with everything I've outlined then exactly? Well, this entire experiment accidentally proved how pointless the diminishing return system currently is. Essentially, the devs went through the trouble of ensuring that diminishing returns impacts skill check difficulty, something that makes complete sense to do and should be accounted for. However, they missed one very important detail when doing this. There's currently no use for it when it comes to the size of great skill checks. This is not happening has forever remained as the only perk that has ever increased the size of great skill checks. A general perk since 2016, by the way, and this niche function is essentially the only reason this perk even gets any usage in the first place. The only other way for a survivor to increase the size of great skill checks are through those two medkit add-ons, which are also coincidentally the worst medkit add-ons to use. But because add-ons are not impacted by diminishing returns, there's currently no possible scenario where diminishing returns would ever impact the size of great skill checks. To go through the trouble of ensuring skill check difficulty can be impacted by diminishing returns is perfectly fine, but how has nothing been changed or added to make this relevant? Where's the thought behind coding something like this into the game and just never seeing any use from it? It's basically accounting for an edge case scenario that's mathematically impossible, at least as it stands today as of this recording. Am I the only one that finds this just a bit insane? It just makes absolutely no sense. Altogether, this perfectly encapsulates why the diminishing return system is currently failing. There's been almost zero effort made to change the meta in any way. Doing perk reworks or number adjustments will at least give players a reason to try other builds or perks. And while it's certainly understandable that diminishing returns was probably only established as a baseline to work off of in the future, it simply does not excuse the lack of meaningful balance changes. At a minimum, a perk like this is not happening should be buffed at least a little bit. The 30% increase it provides is very mediocre at best, but would it truly be that game changing for it to be buffed to something like 50%? And while a buff to this is not happening would be a welcome change, how about introducing some other ways to increase the size of the great skill check? How about actually giving diminishing returns a reason for it to function when it comes to great skill check difficulty? I truly believe it's borderline insane that this was coded into the game and it currently has absolutely no scenario where it's actually going to be used. I hope you enjoyed this experiment turned case study on how DBD's diminishing return system is proving to be rather pointless. If you have any thoughts on the diminishing return system, or even if this is not happening is worthy of a buff, feel free to leave it in the comments. But that's pretty much all I have for now, so thanks for watching.